Girl, you know it's true. Ooh, 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 I love you. Do, 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 do. Yes, you know it's true.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Ooh, 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 I love you. What's going on, folks? Welcome to Sabby's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, fam. Happy Thursday. We have great stories tonight. I can't wait to get into it. And of course, I do want to say we have an interesting theme tonight. Tonight's theme is, oh, hells no. Simply, oh, hells no. And I think you'll see why when we get into those stories, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I was singing it. We got to start out. I know. Christine said Milli Vanilli. I was singing it. I watched the Milli Vanilli biopic last night. And then after that, I watched the new documentary. I'm actually going to get into that tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is going to be an interesting show because one of the stories that I'm covering is the problem with Clive Davis. So we're going to dive into some things about that because there was something I saw during the biopic and the documentary that really gave me pause. You know, there's a lot of people pointing fingers at Milli Vanilli, which of course they're going to be the ones that you look to, right? But at the end of the day, when you find out more about Clive Davis and his involvement with the situation, we got to get into all of that tomorrow. So I'm going to break that down. We'll dive into the Clive Davis issue. Anywho, what's up, guys? Let's go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat. What's going on? It is almost Friday. Shout out to SHS Purr says, quit before he was pushed. Yeah, we'll get into that story about Jim Acosta. Greetings, Tim, though. I rewatched the clip of Tabitha Brown. Always loved her. but that was disgusting in regards to Target. Boycott Target, but not my products. Girl, bye. F your product. She was silent in Gaza too. Yeah, I know. A lot of people have made videos about that. Not just me. Like a lot of people are not happy. I know Mark Lamont Hill made a video about it. The King of Reeds made a video about it. They have pretty much had the same sentiment that I did. But yeah, shout out to Lorez says, hi, Sabby, Eric, Corey, and RBN fam. Great show on RBN earlier. Watching the confirmation hearing of RFK Jr. was annoying. It was clear who represented Big Pharma, which was basically everyone. GG says, hello, Sabby. This plane crash has me shaken up. I used to work in the airline industry. Rest in peace to the victims. This does not make any sense. Yeah, actually, one of my close friends works for the airlines. I'm going to reach out to her probably tomorrow to see what she thinks about all this. It's really sad that there's no survivors right now. That's what they're still saying, but it's really sad. Shout out to Dwayne says, doobie doobie do the damn thing. Greetings, Hannah says, let's get it. Shout out to my comrade JB. Hello, everyone. I find it funny. So many people are all about make America healthy again, but don't believe that healthcare is a right or a necessity, even saying HC workers would be slaves. Yeah, we'll get into all that. Greetings, Lawrence says free Palestine. Shout out to CBC Voter says happy Thursday. Greetings, Ancient Crustacean. That's an interesting name. Says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Mark says, Sabby. Greetings, Cloudness. All right, now Sabby Sabs is in the building. Let's go. Shout out to Bad Wolf. I get 2 shows with Sabby today. It's a good day for me. Greetings, Trash Panda. Since peace. Shout out to C Shata says, hey, Sabby. Greetings, Fire says, hey, dear ones. Much love. Shout out to Mary Beth says, hey, all. Hi, Sabby. I'm making tortillas. Oh, you sound like my kind of friend. Everybody on this show knows that Sabby loves tacos. Okay. I'm a big taco person. I also like burritos as well, although I don't have burritos as often as tacos because tortillas, you know, is not as the best thing for me because the calorie and all that kind of stuff. And you guys know I've been working on my weightlifting stuff. So, but you can make tacos really healthy. You can actually make burritos pretty healthy too, you know, minus the tortilla, because it's really all about what you put in it. So just something to keep in mind. Greetings, Anonymous says, Sabby. Oh, you got a Bills jersey. How you doing, Anonymous? How you doing? I was rooting for you guys. I really wanted Buffalo to get a break. And I'm a Pats fan. I'm over here in Massachusetts, but I wanted the Bills to get a break because I feel like the Bills just can't get a break. They went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and lost 4 years in a row, you know? So I tried. Greetings, John says Oakland. Shout out to Phyllis says Sabby Sabs in the house. Greetings beyond Ebony says peace, Sabby family. Shout out to Chrome says Sabby. Greetings, Quab says good Thursday, everyone. All's one same. Love the intro. Let's go. Make it a great day, everyone. Shout out to Roger. Now lip syncing your own songs is commonplace. Well, your own songs. But yeah. Greetings, D says this beat goes hard. Shout out to Robert said, oh, snap. I actually caught the show at the beginning. And greetings, Notori says, hey. All right. Based. Miss Abby says the Democrats who grilled RFK Jr. are the lowest pieces of human garbage. But we knew that was coming. But I have some things to say about RFK Jr. too. So don't get comfortable, people. I have some things. You guys know how I feel about RFK Jr. I have some things to say about him. Linda says, whoa, let's go, Sabby. What's up, Linda? And greetings, Sakina says, hey, Sabby and fam. Let's go ahead and dive in, folks. Thank you so much, Megay, like reggae. Doobie doo. What's going on? And she has popcorn in front of her in the picture. That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. All right. And shout out to Be Easy says, what's up, Sabby? Salute. What is up, Be Easy? JB, I haven't had banana pudding since I was in high school. It's been a long time because my mom makes it, but she doesn't make it often. And my grandma used to make it for special occasions. So like Christmas, Thanksgiving, that kind of stuff. Other than that, nah. And I can't do store-bought banana pudding, you know. It's like I can't do store-bought potato salad. But you guys know about that. I told you about my my potato salad speech before. You can't eat everybody's potato salad. Anywho, let's go ahead and show you the stories we are discussing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dive right in, fam. Tonight, we are discussing CNN host quits. That is Jim Acosta there in the blue square. It appears Jim's had enough. Jim said, I am out of this piece. We will get into that story. We're also going to discuss, if you have not seen by now, good God, RFK Jr. grilled to the oh my God. They really came after RFK Jr. during his confirmation hearing for this health secretary position for Donald Trump's administration. Good God, we'll get into that. But I'm also going to talk about some of the things that RFK Jr. said during that hearing that should give you pause if you want to make America healthy again. We're also going to discuss Krystal Ball calls out AOC. Yes, she did. And rightfully so, right? So we're going to get into that and we'll talk about this game that both of these parties play and what we can do about that. We're also going to discuss, I told you I was going to get into this, Donald Trump 14th Amendment. So I actually took some time and I read the 14th Amendment. I haven't read this since I was in school, and I went through some of the details, and we're also going to combine that with to like what's happening to Native Americans and where they fit in the 14th Amendment. And we're also going to discuss, of course, American descendants of slavery. So you might learn something tonight. We're going to get into all of that. And of course, last but not least, the plane crash in Washington, D.C., which I think was surprising to many of us, given it's 2025. The skies were clear last night. We're going to break that down. And we do, of course, feel very sorry for all the victims. It's really unfortunate. Really unfortunate. Okay, shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron, keeping the lights on around me. Hey. Thank you so much. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. There are Sabsters. Yes, they are. And there are also Sabbies. Yeah, healthy bunch there, folks. And of course, we are going to shout out the members. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate all of your support. And we have a new patron over here. We call them newbies. Let's give it up for Luke Esposito. Thank you so much, Luke. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate all of you, fam. We got to dive in. We have quite a bit to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the theme tonight is, oh, hells no. Oh, hells no. And you'll see that with the stories. The first story that I do want to dive into, this plane crash in Washington, D.C. last night. I was sitting on the couch just minding my own business. All of a sudden, I see on my Google card on my phone, American Airlines crash in D.C. And I couldn't believe it. I feel like it's 2025. Like, why are we still having plane crashes? And then I looked a little bit more into the story, and it appears that a Black Hawk helicopter crashed into the American Airlines plane. Now, this plane was carrying, from what I understand, 64 passengers so far. Last time I checked, they said there are no survivors. Now, this is going over the Potomac River. If you're familiar with the DMV, that's where my family is originally from. I'm very familiar with that spot. Ronald Reagan Airport there. Let's go ahead and dive into this. Now, Max Blumenthal pointed out something interesting. He said, it looks like the VH-60 Black Hawk military helicopter is blindsided the AA flight with 60 plus on board. Seeing reports everywhere, it had its transponder off as it headed into heavy flight path. Completely outrageous. And of course, he's referring to this video here. Let's show this. And I'll show you something here now. Ignore this plane, okay? Because that's not the plane. Right here. Here's the helicopter, the little dot going right in, kaboom, right there. So that's where it happened. And it's really sad, you guys. Like, I couldn't believe it at first. One of the things I do want to mention that they did announce today, before we get into the aviation expert conversation, apparently the pilots that were in the helicopter were wearing night vision goggles. And I don't know why. There are reports that said the sky was completely clear last night. But let's get into what the aviation expert said here.
Joining us now here on the scene, Mary Schiavo. She is a CNN aviation analyst, former Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Transportation. We also have Cedric Leighton. He's a CNN military analyst, retired Air Force colonel. Thank you both for being here with us on this morning as we cover this unfolding tragedy. And I do just want to reset for everyone who's waking up here on the East Coast. Mary, help us understand what happened here. We know these two planes collided. It's not something, thank the Lord, that we see very often in this country. What happened last night?
What happened last night is American Airlines being flown by PSA Airlines, a Canadair regional jet, 700, holds up to 70 people with 64 on board. It was coming into land, as happens, every few minutes, all the time. There were several planes in the air. It was a busy airport. I landed here myself at 7:30. It was very dark, very cold, a little bit bumpy wind, but weather wasn't really a factor in the accident. Also operating in the area was an Army helicopter. It is reported that it was a training mission. There were lots of helicopters in D.C. ferry around VIPs and all sorts of folks. But this was a training mission. The air traffic control tower specifically asked. It's reported, did ask the helicopter if the helicopter had this American Airlines flight in sight. That's very important. That's very telling. It's a key piece of evidence because the aircraft, the commercial passenger service aircraft, are always under full air traffic control and what's called instrument air traffic direction. So that was flying exactly as the tower, or should have been flying exactly as the tower instructed. There's no indication it was not. So the helicopter was doing what's called see and avoid. The tower said, do you have this aircraft? And get in line or fly in behind it. So it was supposed to find this aircraft in the air, see it, and then fall in behind it.
And of course,
Okay, so let's go ahead and pause here because I know people have a lot of questions. This particular airport, the Ronald Reagan area, is a heavy traffic area. And this is something I think people have complained about before in the past. This is not a large airport. And it does have a lot of traffic that is coming through. So it's not unusual that there's helicopters in that area. And the sad thing about this is the plane was just about to land. Like they were almost on the ground. And this just goes to show you anything can happen. Anything. Because what do they always tell you when the plane lands? Don't they say, wait a minute, sit in your seat. Don't get out of your seat yet. Don't unbuckle your seatbelt just yet. Because even on the runway, something could happen, right? So it's just, it ate me up when I saw that footage and I saw just how close they were to landing. Let's go on a little bit more here.
You can hear the helicopters overhead right now, and just to give everyone a sense of where we're standing, we can also see the lights from the boats that are part of this search and rescue operation. At this hour, officials have not updated. We're still waiting to see at what point this may become a search and recovery operation, because again, we know that no survivors have been pulled from the water. But Cedric Leighton, this river, it's an incredibly beautiful stretch, right? I mean, behind us also, I doubt the viewers can see it, but we can see the Washington Monument, the United States Capitol. At the other end of the mall is the Lincoln Memorial. This is a beautiful approach. If you're oftentimes, these small planes will take this absolutely beautiful approach down the river, past all of these gorgeous DC landmarks. The other thing we also know, Cedric, if you live here, is that there is constant helicopter traffic over this segment of the river. It's often extraordinarily low. I know when I sometimes have visitors in town, many of them are taken aback by how loud the helicopter noise is, how many there are, how low they fly. Tell us a little bit more about what this specific helicopter does, what the unit that was flying it does, what they may have been training for, and how this could have happened.
Yeah, and another thing I want to mention, I know many people are asking, why were they in that area anyway? I asked the same question, and apparently I guess the facility, like their base or whatever, is also within that area. But this is an unusual practice for them. So that's another thing to me that was just kind of like, it really gave me pause.
Casey, this helicopter, the UH-60, which is a Black Hawk helicopter, belongs to the 12th Aviation Battalion, which is located at Fort Belvoir, Davison Army Airfield, to be specific. And what the unit's mission is to fly VIPs and other necessary things around the various posts and bases here in the DC area. They fly a lot of people in and out of the Pentagon. They fly a lot of special missions for various entities in and around the National Capital Region. And they also provide a service, a logistical service for the Pentagon and for other military units. So it's a critical unit, and it has had a very good safety record up until this particular incident. They've done a lot of training. There's been a lot of aerial activity in the last week to 10 days out of Davison Army Airfield and several other installations. So there's been a lot of practicing going on for these pilots. We don't know exactly what the nature of this mission was. It almost certainly was some kind of a training mission. We don't know whether the pilots were familiar with this area, if they had just been newly assigned to the unit, or if they were experienced pilots in this particular area. So these are things that are going to have to come out, but it is one of the premier units that ferries VIPs around. Luckily, no VIPs on board the aircraft, the helicopter that crashed, but that is always a big risk. And you mentioned a lot of helicopters around here. Go down any of the interstates in this area, and you will see the helicopters come in and out of some of the locations here. And we get used to it by being here, but there's always a danger in aviation, and that's something that we're seeing right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's always a danger with aviation. Now, I do want to bring up something else. Another thing that I read, it did say that apparently, I guess they were understaffed for traffic controllers. Traffic controllers, by the way, is one of the most stressful jobs in the country. It is not something that is just something that you can just, like, for example, you know how sometimes you might have gone to work or whatever, maybe a little hungover, or maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, and you can still kind of get by the day and do the job. Traffic controllers is not one of those jobs. That is a stressful job. So if they were understaffed, that in itself is also a problem. They're probably going to look into that as well to see if that played a factor with this. Now, the transportation secretary, who is Sean Duffy, and I'm sorry, I always laugh. And I know Sean has been a politician for a while, but to me, Sean, you will always be Sean from The Real World Boston. I always remember Sean from The Real World Boston, him and Montana and Elka and all of them. And that was one of my favorite seasons. So to me, I remember that Sean. Now I know Sean got married and has a family and all this stuff. He got married to Rachel from The Real World, San Francisco, but he always looks like Sean from The Real World to me. But listen to what he had to say here.
We wish we were gathering for different purposes today. I just want to let you know that the Department of Transportation, the FAA, along with the White House, President Trump, local, state, and federal partners, all working together on this incident in unison. I couldn't be prouder of this team that's been assembled, working tirelessly Mayor, I want to thank you specifically for your work. A few details I'd like to give all of you, and some of you reported this, but last night, if you live in the D.C. area, you would know that this was a clear night last night. The helicopter was in a standard pattern. If you live in the D.C. area, you'll see helicopters up and down the river. This flight pattern is seen oftentimes when you live in D.C. This was a standard flight pattern last night as well. The American airline flight coming into land was in a standard flight pattern as it was coming into DCA. So this was not unusual with a military aircraft flying the river and aircraft landing at DCA. And again, if you live in the area, you'll see that frequently with those two aircraft working together. As many of you have reported, we have located the two aircrafts. The fuselage of the American airline plane was inverted. It's been located in 3 different sections. It's in about waist deep water. So that recovery is going to go on today as that recovery takes place of the fuselage of the aircraft. NTSB is going to start to analyze that aircraft, partner with the FAA with all of the information we have to get the best results possible for the American people. I would just say that safety is our expectation. Everyone who flies in American skies expects that we fly safely, that when you depart an airport, you get to your destination. That didn't happen last night. And I know that President Trump, his administration, the FAA, the DOT, we will not rest until we have answers for the families and for the flying public. You should be assured that when you fly, you're safe.
And let's again remember the helicopter crashed into the airline, not the other way around. So from what I understand, that plane was split into 2. So they're still saying there are no survivors. I don't know if they've pulled bodies or from the river or not. I don't know, but they said that there are no survivors. And, you know, this is a tragic situation. This gentleman here, he was interviewed and he said, my wife was on the plane. So listen to this. I think he was trying to figure out if that was the same plane. Listen.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
Can you show us a text message that you got from her?
Landing in 20 minutes. The rest of my text did not get delivered. That's when I realized something might be up.
Yeah. I feel really sorry for that guy. It's just really sad. Again, what drives me crazy about this is that plane was so close to landing. Now, I do want to point something out. Eric brought this to my attention. It appears there's something with the signal. It says, what is ADS-B signal? Black Hawk helicopter that crashed into American Airlines flight in DC was reportedly not using aviation technology. So I want to dive into this a little bit. It says that the collision happened, and it says here, the rescue operations were underway. New reports have suggested that the military aircraft was not broadcasting ADS-B as per ADS-B exchange. For the uninitiated, ADS-B stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. It is a modern aviation surveillance technology used to track an aircraft's data, including its location, velocity, and altitude. So I thought that was pretty interesting that it wasn't using that. Remember, they said that the pilots were using night vision goggles. Now, they said this was a training exercise. I don't know what they were training for. And honestly, we may never find out. But this is something I thought people should know. And it goes on to say here, this part right here, It says the data is further exploited to create a surveillance interface between the air traffic control tower and the aircraft. ADS-B multifaceted approach to procure data makes it comparatively more advanced and precise than traditional radar systems. So that is interesting. Furthermore, it has two distinct services, ADS-B out and ADS-B in. ADS-B out allows aircraft to broadcast information such as their location, altitude, and more to receivers like ATC towers or other aircraft. On the flip side, ADS-B in provides pilots with information about other aircraft. Although ADS-B in is not mandatory, ADS-B out has been mandatory for all aircraft in the U.S. and most airspaces since January 1st, 2020. And I think Eric's going to jump on to talk a little bit more here about the tech.
Yeah, so the ADS-B, it's using GPS and it's the standard now for aircrafts. But what you get into with this is that the helicopter was a military helicopter, and the military, as we know in most things, goes by their own rules, and so they don't have the same type of rules. If it was any kind of other helicopter, it would have, if it was a civilian helicopter, it damn sure would have had the ADS-B. They do have another system called MLAT that this article gets into a little bit, and the MLAT is an older system that uses triangulation and whatnot. I mean, part of this too is that a lot depends on where you're talking about that the aircraft is flying. So when jets and even helis and things are out in the open, then you got the ADS-B. It's like you might have seen Flight Tracker where you see them flying around and whatnot, and you have GPS and that tracks them. When you're coming into an airport, when it's takeoffs and landings, it's a totally different world. And in there, they're dependent on the tower, the air traffic control, to really track everything and make sure that there are no collisions and no big problems. So the ADS-B almost doesn't come into it as much near the airport. My understanding is it's more about the tower and the radar, and so it's generally up to the tower to track the planes, to tell them which runway to land on, and to keep them separate. The wrinkle here is, again, it's military aircraft, and so and it's a military heli. And so from what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, these military helicopters just make a habit of flying. I mean, that's part of what they do. They go up and down the Potomac all the time. And what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to stay low and stay out of the way. And they also fly by the woman on the earlier video called it see and avoid, right? They actually are supposed to eyeball the other aircraft and stay out of the flight paths. And so but I think what happened, from what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, is that this was a pilot error on the part of the military pilot of that helicopter. The air traffic control did all they could. They said, do you have the planes in sight? And they said yes. And then it's up to the pilot. It's really on the pilot to avoid other aircraft and do their route safely. The jet just was doing a pretty standard landing, and it might have been a somewhat unusual runway compared to other runways I read, but it was still pretty standard. And apparently, one theory that makes sense to me is that the heli pilot was watching the wrong plane. There was another plane that was coming in on one of the more standard runways, and the heli and so the tower says, do you see the plane? And the heli pilot is watching that one, and they say, yeah, I see it, I got it, and didn't see the other one. And it's easier to have happen than you think. I mean, you might think, how is that possible? But it's nighttime. You've got city lights all over the place.
Right.
And the other issue seems to be that the heli got too high. The other
Yes.
thing they're supposed to do is they're supposed to stay under 200 feet and just glide along the river. And so I think between those two things and just a lot of bad luck, I think they just flew right into the jet. There's also, and then there's also the kind of the greater issue of like, why do we have military helis, these helis flying under the flight path of landing and taking off jets? And that seems just inherently crazy, but it seems like what they do all the time. And usually nothing bad happens. And, maybe if we had an FAA that wasn't captured by the industry and did real safety regulations, maybe they would say, oh, we can't be doing this. It's mad unsafe. But, is the FAA going to tell the military don't fly there?
I mean, that airspace is small anyway. Like that's not a large airport. This point that Linda brings up, she said, so they share airspace, but do not even have systems that seamlessly work together. This is actually, I don't know if that's the case with this, but I will say it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for two different, entities to share a space and not actually work together. Like it's or have different, you know what I mean? Like have different systems that don't work together. Like it's not.
The big wrinkle here is that it's a military helicopter.
Right.
And both of those things play into it. You got military who are basically cowboying it, doing what they want out there generally. And it's a helicopter flying low. And it's almost like a manual thing, whereas everything else happening at the airport is strictly under the control of the tower.
That's right. That's right. And another thing, okay, thank you, Eric. I'm gonna go to the other parts here. Another thing I want to mention too, because, and I'll get back to the whole decentralized part as well. As I told you guys before, they are still saying that there were no known survivors. And I want to get into one of the soldiers that was on that helicopter apparently went to Gwinnett County High School. I know where that's at in the Atlanta area. Soldier on Army helicopter in deadly DC crash, graduated from Gwinnett County School. So he looks fairly young. And his name is Ryan O'Hara. So he was one of the soldiers that was on the helicopter. So it's just all really sad. Now we got to get to this other part, because I've been seeing this everywhere, because now people are pointing out that the co-pilot was female. Listen to this. The pilot in command of the Black Hawk that crashed into the passenger jet over DC was a woman. So you know what people are doing now, folks. You know what's happening. It says the co-pilot or pilot in command was a female. The official told Fox News she had 500 hours of flying experience. And then it mentions Ryan O'Hara as well. And so there were three of them. I think the other gentleman's name was Simon. This person here is pointing out that she was in training and that he was the chief pilot. So I don't know. There's information being like tossed around. I think people are trying to find a way to point fingers at this. And I have to say this. Donald Trump is already saying that this is because of DEI. And what I want to say is this. I can't believe that people are making this political right now. Number one, everything that goes wrong is not because of DEI. And I think that Donald Trump, I think you need to give an apology to the families. The number one concern right now should be these families are grieving. They lost their loved ones. I still don't even know everybody that was on the plane. Someone mentioned this in the chat and they said, have they released a list of the full names yet? I haven't seen a full list yet. Maybe when people see this clip on Friday, maybe they'll have it then, but I haven't seen a full. That's where the focus should be. It should be like, oh my God, these people died. And let's see, we can find out who everybody was and reach out to the families. That's where the focus should be. And I see Donald Trump making it political, and I see the Democrats trying to make it political in the other way. And that should not be the focus. And that just shows you how divided this country is. When a tragedy happens and people die, The focus should be on those people and their families. But people want to make it political. That's not cool. Not cool. So we have to get away from that. I did not like that at all. The other thing here I want to point to is what James Lee said. He brought up some really interesting points as well about that. And I think I have to say too, like, what people have to understand is that the military performs missions that are need to know basis. They're not always going to tell us what they're doing or why they're doing it. And as someone who grew up in a military family, I'll be the first to let you know, I didn't know everything that my family members did, when they were in the military. Like, again, like they keep these things like kind of to their self. And I guess, like for good reason. But so we may never really find out what the training was for or what it was about. I'm curious to hear the names of the people that were on the plane as well. Again, we did hear that the air traffic controllers, there was understaffing there. And because of that, yes, that is going to be an issue. Like I said, that is one of the most stressful jobs in this country. That is not an area that should be understaffed, that as well. But I think people are pointing fingers and they're trying to find, someone to blame. And I think, again, like, put the DEI shit to the side. You already like made your executive orders to overdo that anyway. Put that shit to the side and let's focus on finding out who the people were who were on the plane and reaching out to the families and let these people grieve. Now, James said this, and I thought this was pretty interesting. Check this out.
So last night, a military helicopter crashed into an American Airlines flight, tragically ending the lives of 67 people on board. And already the internet is abound with theories about what might have happened. Was it a repeat of New Orleans and Las Vegas? Was it something about Saudi Arabia? Maybe even a shooting star or white orbs? Or was it DEI? Could it be one or any of those things? Definitely, maybe. But I have a sneaky feeling that when all the dust settles, the cause will most likely be some combination of decisions that were made in order to deprioritize safety and increase profits. Because near collisions happen all the time, especially in DC. This is an article from last April involving JetBlue and Southwest. Another one in DC, this one March of 2023, involving Republic Airways. Reagan Airport, DCA, is just one of the most trafficked air corridors in America. You not only have commercial planes, but you have military aircraft oftentimes flying side by side next to these commercial flights that are taking off and landing in DC. Yet last year, Congress authorized more flights to go in and out of Reagan Airport in DC. Why? Because Delta Airlines and other various airline lobby groups wanted them to do it, so they did. But at the same time, the country is short thousands of air traffic controllers. There are now reports that staffing was quote unquote not normal last night in DC and that there was only one controller instead of the usual two. I don't know, what can I say? They got to get better lobbyists, I guess. This is from a pilot now turned whistleblower describing an alarming situation at another major airport in the United States. Quote, I'm a pilot and received this email from an airport manager about an issue that has been a growing problem for years in the Bay Area and is now growing even worse. San Carlos Airport is an airport within 10 miles of San Francisco International Airport, and it will have no air traffic controllers starting February 1st. The departure route for San Carlos directly overlaps the arrival path of San Francisco. San Carlos also hosts two of the area's largest flight schools. This means you now have a situation where inexperienced pilots will now be departing into highly complex airspace using solely their own judgment and reading of charts so as to not collide with aircraft landing in San Francisco. This guy goes on to describe some kind of FAA contract bidding situation that resulted in all of this, but not ideal to say the least. So what exactly happened to cause this tragedy in DC last night? We don't know for sure yet, but to me, I think this is a clear indicator, one of the many indicators of an empire in decline, and we'll have to see if people want to fix it.
That is the great point there that I think we should all like leave with. I said the theme is, oh, hell's no. Because when I heard this story also, I was like, oh, hell's no. Like, how does this happen? Right. But the point that James made there is very important, where he said at the end of the day, we are seeing signs of a declining empire. Now, Professor Richard Wolff has talked about this a lot, but it's not even just Professor Richard Wolff anymore. More people are admitting to the fact that, yes, we are a nation in decline. How is it that we don't have enough people to fill these positions for aircraft controllers? I mean, this is a, There is something to be said about this. But one of the things I do have to say, my heart goes out to all of the, victims' family members. I know Nancy Kerrigan was in an interview earlier. She said she knew some of the people that were on that plane. She said some of them were coaches. Nancy Kerrigan, a former figure skater. She said some of them were coaches and athletes from the figure skating community. And she was crying and just bawling. And I'm like, these are people, like these are real people that have lives. And the last thing that people should be focusing on right now is, it's because of DEI. Oh, there was a woman in there. How dare you? How dare you at this point? Focus on the victims. Get us the names so we know who was on that damn plane. Reach out to the families and let these people grieve. All right. Let's get to some of the comments here. Shout out to Jamal Johnson. Thank you for becoming a member. Give Jamal a big whoop whoop. Thank you, Old Crow. Military exercise joint federal most likely. The SECDEF said it was a continuity of government aircraft. Skylar says, so tragic. And there were a bunch of kids and their coaches on that plane coming home from an ice skating camp. Yeah. Thank you, Tim, who's been a member for 5 months. Don't forget your YouTube plaque, Sabby. The Dems are feckless cowards. SMH, I'm an independent. But damn, at this point, the uniparty is in full effect. I hear you. V says, remember Air Florida crash in the Potomac 77? That was daytime. The rescue images were unforgettable, pulling the flight attendant out of the water. Oh, I wasn't born yet, but I'll have to look that one up, V. Thank you, Cowpoke. The right wing just lost all the support in Kansas they ever had. The outside racial agitation over the last 24 hours is the work of the Klan in the land of John Brown and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Never. Interesting. Kansas, eh? Jake says Trump is a clickbait president. A clickbait president. I've never heard that term, but that one's interesting. Oh, my days said Trump shut down the FAA oversight. Thank you, Roger. Not just political, but partisan. Get rid of parties. Thanks, Cowpoke. They won't let us grieve. I talked to Mayor Wu today, and the racial attack she's come under from DC and MAGA is igniting the Jayhawker spirit again. Yeah, man. All this division, all this political division. And thanks, Jamal. I stepped away from the live, but the confirmations of Tulsi, RFK Jr., and Cash plus crash got my brain wrecked. Think it's all connected. That's interesting, too. Let's get the comment on Rockfin. Thank you. Hey. All right. Thank you, Dave. Sabs doing the show tonight. Nice to see. I've been meaning to visit the local RBN group when I can step away from writing, editing stuff here. Good to see the work of the local RBN. Thank you so much. Okay. If you're just joined, don't forget to smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. Again, the theme is, oh, hell's no. And we're getting to our next story. RFK Jr. attended his confirmation hearing in front of the Senate. And RFK Jr. was really grilled. Like, the Democratic Party really went after him heavily, of course, because of the positions that he's had in the past about, different jabs. We got to say jabby jabs, like on the show, you know how YouTube is and stuff like that. Another thing that was brought up was the healthcare issue overall. And I want to start with this conversation that he had. It was between him and Bernie Sanders. I do want to get started with that. Let's dive in here. This is a doozy. Actually, hold on. Let me make sure. Yeah, this is the one. Here we go.
Mr. Kennedy, thanks for being with us. I very much like the slogan that you coined, Make America Healthy Again. And I strongly agree with that effort. Despite spending, as you indicated, 2 or 3 times as much per capita on healthcare as other nations, we have 85 million people who are uninsured, underinsured. We have all kinds of chronic illnesses. Our life expectancy is lower than other countries. And for working class people in this country, they are living 6-7 years shorter lives than the top 1%. We got a problem, okay? And I'm going to suggest some ideas that I think can remedy that. Last year, the insurance industry in this country made over $70 billion, while at the same time, 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. Do you agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Yes? No?
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Health care a human right? Is health care a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
Yeah.
I would say it's different, because if with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool.
Well,
We're going to stop right there. This is the first part that I want to dive in on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I told you we have to stop saying healthcare is a right, and we need to say healthcare is a necessity. Because what happens, RFK just demonstrated it right there for you. What happens is that a lot of times people, when you talk about what is a right, they consider that is something that doesn't cost anything. Free speech doesn't cost money. So when you mention something like healthcare and you say healthcare is a right and that costs money, they're going to say they don't see it as a right. You see what I mean? In fact, I wrote an article about this recently. I want to go ahead and bring that up and we'll come back to the clip there. Now, I tried to warn people about this. Let me see if I can find it here. 1 second. Because I want to get to where's my... Oh, that's weird. I'm sorry, guys. Let me get to that. Eric, can you bring up that article? You know which one I'm talking about, my Substack article. Can you bring that up really quick? I thought I had it here. Well, let me finish what I was saying here, and I'll let Eric, find that or whatever. The point that I'm trying to make is this, and you can just put it in the thank you. The point that I'm trying to make is this. Number one, if you want to make America healthy again, people need to have health care. The problem that we have in this country is that we have too many people. There's a lot of people that don't have health insurance at all. And so if you don't have health insurance at all, then that means that you're going to pay out of pocket to see the doctor. So those people usually will not go to the doctor because they can't afford to go. When I didn't have health insurance and I went to the doctor, this is years ago, I went to the doctor, I had to pay $200. That was just to step foot in the doctor's office. That doesn't cover the labs or anything like that. So the thing with RFK Jr. is that he wants to make America healthy again, but RFK Jr. apparently only wants this for people who can afford health care, because he doesn't think that you should have health care as a right. And I'm going to show you a contradiction with him as well. Now, I discussed this in my article, Don't Ignore the Luigi Moment. And I'll just go down to this part here when I get into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right. If you follow me on Substack, you'll see some of my articles. I started writing articles again. This is what I was trying to point out to people here. First and foremost, listen to this. Now that you understand that our government doesn't care about us, the question is, what do we do about it? So you got to understand that first. They don't care. First and foremost, we need Americans from different political ideologies to understand that healthcare is a necessity. I used to say healthcare is a right, but going into 2025, I've been reflecting about movement building and the language that we use. Once you say it is a right, this leads some people to think about the word privilege. This can cause those who are more fiscally conservative to reject your premise because they don't want to pay for it. While many progressives realize Medicare for all is actually cheaper, many who are not progressive do not see it that way. People may be more understanding if you vocalize that healthcare is a necessity. We were taught this in grade school through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now we're going to take a trip back here, guys. Remember this pyramid? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to start at the base first and work your way up. And you'll notice here, Maslow has the psychological needs, but the next step on the pyramid is safety and security. And you notice under safety and security, it says health, employment, property, family, and social ability. So even Maslow realized that health is a need, therefore health is a necessity. This is important for people to really understand, because that's why RFK can say it that way. That's why he can push back in that way. Can we go back to where we were, Eric? Thank you. That's how he can push back in that way, because he's like, well, no, people shouldn't have to pay for your health care, that type of thing. Now, let's go back in here, because I noticed something else about Bernie Sanders, too. Something he did here. Watch this.
Oh, are you guaranteed the same right? Or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry. I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here. All right. Every other country on earth says healthcare, whether you're poor or rich, young or old, is a human right. I'm not hearing you say that. All right. You've talked about the drug companies, and maybe we agree on this one. As you all know, despite the drug companies making over $100 billion in profits, paying CEOs outrageous compensation packages, we in some cases pay 10 times more for the same drug. Will you support legislation that I will introduce which says that in America we should not be paying a nickel more for prescription drugs than people around the rest of the world? Yes, no?
To equalize it?
Not to equalize it, that we should not be paying more than other countries for the same damn drug.
President Trump has asked me, in fact, I had a meeting with President Trump a week ago where we showed him the charts.
He knows the charts.
We're paying 10 times more from Europe.
That's right. And are you going to commit to us that you will end that absurdity?
I think in principle we can. We should end that disparity.
Good. Okay. That's great. All right.
Pause there for a second. So the question that I have, why didn't Bernie have this same attitude towards Joe Biden, who also didn't think that healthcare was a right? Joe Biden said if the Medicare for All bill came across his desk, he said that he would not sign it. So the same way that he can have that type of rage towards RFK Jr., he should have had that same type of tone towards Joe Biden, but he didn't. Bernie said that Joe Biden was his friend. Bernie supported Joe Biden when he was running for re-election, even though he knew Joe Biden didn't have it all together anymore mentally, right? So this is one of the things that the Democratic Party, well, and Bernie's independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats. This is one of the things that drives me crazy, is that when you have people that are part of the party you caucus with who share the same views as people across the aisle, like RFK Jr. or Donald Trump, et cetera, other Republican senators, you don't give them that same type of hostility that you gave towards RFK Jr. So this is something that we do have to start to call out. So I believe that healthcare is a necessity. I believe that we should have healthcare for everyone in this country, and I will die on this hill. And what RFK has to understand is that Luigi Mangione disagrees with you, RFK, and the majority of Americans agree with Luigi Mangione. So while you may have points about the food industry, yes, there are harmful chemicals that are put in our food. 100% agree with RFK about that. You may have points about we have to make sure we're getting jabs that are safe and effective. I get that too. But if everyone doesn't have health care, they're not going to have the opportunity to be able to entertain some of those things. The point that he made about the smoking. Chanda here. Remember, I called her out the other night. I told you guys, please help Chanda. She's suffering from she's fighting cancer right now. So Chanda said, hey, I may have brought cancer on myself, but I also paid into the system my whole life. I kind of hate them both. Remember, Chanda talked about this, right? So she's going through cancer right now. But the point I want to make is, regardless if Chanda paid into the system or not, the reality is you can eat healthy, you can exercise, and you can still get cancer. So the example that RFK used, I don't feel like that was fair. And I want to give you an example here. Cancer Alley. For someone who had a platform where he was all about healthcare, RFK, I noticed, didn't really go into this. Cancer Alley has been determined to be a crisis. It's not in a third world country. That's happening right here in the United States, ladies and gentlemen, in Louisiana. And guess who's impacted? Guess who this impacts directly? I'm pretty sure if you think about it, you can figure it out. It said right here that the fossil fuel and petrochemical industry in Louisiana area has become known as Cancer Alley. It has devastated the health, lives, and environment of residents. This is coming from Human Rights Watch. A lot of people don't know about this. It goes on to say here, parts of Cancer Alley have the highest risk of cancer from industrial air pollution in the U.S. These harms are disproportionately borne by the area's Black residents. So for all the Black people in Louisiana who live in Cancer Alley, and do not come to me and say, well, they shouldn't live there. People can't help where they're born. And if you're not going to give them any money for them to move, I don't want to hear it. This shouldn't happen at all, but it happens. If you go from the South End and walk across the street to Roxbury, your life expectancy already decreases because you're in Roxbury now. The chances of you are having asthma is higher. So the point is, RFK Jr., the people who were born in Cancer Alley, who may not have smoked cigarettes, they don't deserve to have health care? These are people that can get cancer because of environmental conditions that are out of their control. And then there's the silent one that I know he don't really want to get into, and that's this concept of Israel having health care, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I know that he loves Benjamin Netanyahu, or maybe he claims he doesn't, but we know he loves Rabbi Shmuley, right? They're tight like that. And he says he's not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu, but you're a fan of what Israel is doing. He has always come out to support them and back them. He's a staunch Zionist. Now, he just sat up there and told you in the confirmation hearing that he doesn't think that healthcare is a right. But the country that he loves to praise so much and he loves to kiss their ass so much, they have universal healthcare. In fact, not only do they have universal healthcare, but it says here, this is coming from their information. Does Israel have universal healthcare? Israel provides a right to universal healthcare for its citizens, a right. So my question was, would RFK Jr. tell Israelis they don't have a right to health care? If RFK Jr. was confronted with this, if he was sitting right in front of Benjamin Netanyahu or even Rabbi Shmuley or somebody in Israel, would RFK Jr. tell them they don't have a right to have health care? Probably not, because he's too busy kissing their ass. How is it that this country that our government sends $3.8 billion to every year, how is it they have a right to have health care, but we don't? Make that make sense to me. This is why I say, oh, hells no. This makes absolutely no freaking sense. Now, there's one part here that we'll get into where I do think Bernie might have missed the plot on this one. Listen here.
I happen to believe that climate change is real, it's an existential threat, and it is a healthcare issue. Donald Trump thinks that it is a hoax originating in China. Question is, in your judgment, is climate change a hoax, or is it real, causing devastating problems?
President Trump and I, from the beginning, from our first meeting, agreed to disagree on that issue. I believe climate change is existential. My job is to make Americans healthy again.
All right, you believe that you think that you disagree with Trump? You don't think climate change is a hoax, is what I'm hearing.
My job here is to make
just ask you that, Mr. Kennedy, not a trick question.
I answered your question, Senator Sanders.
Okay, you disagree with the president on that?
I answered your question.
Okay. I'm going to pick up on a point that Senator Hassan made. Look, there is no question that abortion is a divisive issue in this country. I would say a majority of the people are pro-choice. There's a strong minority who are pro-life. A year and a half ago, you went to New Hampshire, running for president, gave a speech, and you talked about government should not tell a woman what she can do with her own body. That's her choice. Now, I think everybody on that side is pro-life. I think Everybody here is pro-choice. I have never seen any major politician flip on that issue quite as quickly as you did when Trump asked you to become HHS secretary. Tell me why you think people should have confidence in your consistency and in your word when you really made a major U-turn on an issue of that importance in such a short time.
So I have to issue a correction here. He actually made a U-turn on that issue before he decided to join alongside with Donald Trump. I covered that on the show when he changed his position about abortion. And I remember he was getting a lot of backlash from people about that at that point in time. He also changed his position on qualified immunity and policing and all that. I covered all those things. So that was a miss up there from Bernie. But listen to this.
Senator, I believe, and I've always believed, that every abortion is a tragedy.
But you told the people of New Hampshire that it was their right. All right, let me do a last question here because I'm running out of time. I think the gist of what you were trying to say.
So again, Bernie, Joe Biden changed his position on abortion throughout his career. But Bernie, again, you did not speak to Biden with that same tone that you did with RFK Jr. This is the problem that I have with the political parties. Be consistent. It shouldn't matter what party RFK is a part of. If he's not being consistent, he's not being consistent. That applied to Joe Biden too. So you should have had that same animosity towards him. Now, we'll move on to this part here as well, because it gets crazier. Now RFK Jr. decides to call Bernie out to his face about money that Bernie took during his campaign. However, RFK Jr. isn't being 100% truthful, and I'll show you the receipts for that as well. So this is all you can tell is getting kind of tense. Watch this.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? It's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
And
protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would no. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money
contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate
PAC. You were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but you have not answered.
So there's some misrepresentation there, right? Because I think that people need to know how to read these charts on Open Secrets. Now, Zainab was on it because what Zainab pointed out, she said RFK lied. There's a difference in donations from a fry cook at McDonald's and donations from CEOs and corporate PACs. Bernie's donations, according to Open Secrets, zero corporate PAC money, unlike RFK, who put his billionaire donor as his running mate. So I just want to show you the difference. This is what people need to understand. So if you look on Open Secrets, you have small individual contributions, large ones, other PAC contributions, and then candidate self-financing. So Bernie is saying, no, I did not get the PAC money, etc., which you can see that here. He said most of my money came from small individual contributions, and the PAC money that Bernie received, if I remember correctly, came from like the teachers union. I think he also got donation from the police union, like those types of PACs, right? So not big pharma PACs. And then she also has a picture here where you can see top contributors 2019 through 2024. And you can see this is what people get wrong. And I saw a lot of people retweeting that on Twitter when they didn't look on Open Secrets themselves to see how this work. And I'll show you, look. So for example, contributor Google, over $46,000. There are two columns here after total. One says individuals and one says PACs. Bernie did not take money from the PACs. So you see the difference? Kaiser Permanente, over $35,000, but not from the PAC, from the individuals. So the way that this works is someone who did donate to Bernie Sanders, when I would donate to him, there was a question of what industry I was in. So if I selected the industry like education, then it would show up, that would go into the category of education, right? Where Bernie got money from. That doesn't mean he got PAC money from the pharma companies, which he didn't, as you can see here. But what they do on Open Secrets, because they have to report everything, is that they will show you got this amount of money from individuals that happen to work at those companies. So at the time, since I was in higher ed and I was working at BU, etc., I would fall under a certain industry, but that doesn't mean he got the PAC money from there. So RFK Jr. was incorrect about that. So it's misleading to say Bernie got this money from Big Pharma when in reality, those were individual people that happened to work there. So again, you have to be clear about these things. Eric, let's go to part 2. We're going to venture on to the Elizabeth Warren part, because this gets a little crazy. This gets a little crazy. It's very obvious to me that they were really not fond of RFK Jr. And I do think they went a little over the top. Like, again, I don't think they would speak to other people who are part of the Democratic Party that share some of these same views that way, but they did towards him because he's trying to be a part of the Trump administration. Now things get even spicier, folks. This is Elizabeth Warren confronting RFK. Listen to this.
Yeah, you've taken in $2.5 million. I want to know if you will commit right now that not only will you not go to work for drug companies, you won't go to work suing the drug companies and taking your rake out of that while you're a secretary and for 4 years after. It's just...
I'll commit to not taking any fees from drug companies while I'm secretary.
No. I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
no,
and I'm not going to agree to that,
drug
Senator.
Companies as much as you want.
I'm not going to agree to not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well,
and to be clear, she was kind of asking him not to sue these companies.
Let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program.
I'm sorry, I thought it was funny. He blew his nose at that moment. Anyway, to Eric's point, notice who she's looking out for, though, right? Notice who she's looking out for in this conversation. I don't hear her mention anything about people needing health care. At least Bernie went down that road. I mean, Elizabeth Warren at one point was running on Medicare for all when she ran in 2020 in the Democrat primary, and then decided to guess towards the end to back away from it and to say that Bernie was a misogynist. So she'd be all over the place. But the reality is she's not looking out for the people. She's looking out for the pharma companies. Listen,
there's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS. And I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as secretary will also benefit you financially down the line?
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
Look, no one should be fooled here.
This was very theatric to me. I felt like it was a little over the top. Again, you can disagree with RFK Jr., and I don't agree with him on a lot of things. You can disagree with him, but I felt like the way that she took it, to me, this was like over the top. I'm like, come on. Is this, Congress here? Is this a confirmation hearing? Or am I watching Judge Judy? Is this the People's Court? I was so confused. Like, it was just over the top. I don't know if she's trying to score political points or what.
Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy, will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule.
She's so angry. Look at the look on her face.
I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
How about then say you won't make money off what you do as Secretary of HHS?
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno.
Oh boy. But Liz, you make money off what you do too. They all make money off of what they do. I mean, it's just, this was quite laughable to me. Quite laughable. So here's another one that this part right here, this is funny too. And I don't think Elizabeth Warren realized how bad this sounds. Listen to this.
Or profitable. In fact, he may have the opportunity to bankrupt the vaccine manufacturers, and then nobody gets vaccines. Or profitable.
Oh boy, Elizabeth. Oh my God. Jeez, that was tense. The Tulsi one isn't even that bad. And then there was this from Nicole Shanahan. Jesus Christ. If you could not be more obvious, I don't know what to say. She says, dear U.S. Senators, Bobby may play nice. I won't. Wait till you hear what Nicole Shanahan says. This is very disturbing.
Hey everyone, tomorrow is a pivotal moment in our nation's history. At 10 a.m. Eastern Time, RFK will sit in front of the Senate Finance Committee for his confirmation hearing to be our nation's next Secretary of Health and Human Services. I urge everyone to call their U.S. senators over the following days and demand they vote yes on Bobby's nomination. He is more than qualified. He's proven, principled, and prepared to lead. I'll share a list below of key senators. If they represent your state, they need to hear from you.
This is where she should have stopped the video. All she should have done, he's very qualified. That's all she had to do right there. But no, Nicole decides to go down a dark path that you just can't turn back from.
If they don't, please call your own senator and ask them to vote yes. We need as many votes as we can get. So this hasn't been widely reported, but in 2020, I cut large checks to Chuck Schumer to help Democrats flip 2 Senate seats in Georgia from red to blue. The 2 candidates I helped elect, Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator John Ossoff. Please know I will be watching your votes very closely. I will make it my personal mission that you lose your seats in the Senate if you vote against the future health of America's children.
Excuse me. Hello. Flag on the play. What the hell does that mean? She will make it her mission to make sure that you lose your seats? Oh, hell's no. So look at it this way. This woman boldly is saying that she's got the money. She got the money to help you get in there. She got the money to make sure that you don't return. In other words, Nicole Shanahan is here bragging about buying elections. So the point that I made to people when RFK Jr. was running is that he is not detached from the billionaire class. He is not detached from Wall Street. For the people who are telling you that he's not going to support Wall Street, he's been supporting Wall Street, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, he had super PACs. I sounded the alarm. And if you're supporting Wall Street, if you're backing the billionaire class, if you in cohesion here with billionaires, you are not going to look out for the working class. You're going to look out for your class interests and your billionaire buddies. So Nicole's just giving the game, letting everybody know I got the money to make sure that you won't get in there. Now, do you guys see who's running things? Now, does everybody see it's not these politicians, it's these billionaires, these people with all this money, and they're the ones that make the world go round, and they're the ones that are influencing policy decision. Now, do you see who's really in charge? Who does she think she is? Who are you, Nicole? Like, I was seriously like, I couldn't believe she made this video. Because I really said to myself, like, oh, hells no. Let me let her finish here.
And more than that, I also want to say to Senators Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Bill Cassidy, Tom Tillis, James Lankford, Cory Booker, John Fetterman, Bernie Sanders, and Catherine Cortez Masto, this is a bipartisan message, and it comes directly from me. While Bobby may be willing to play nice, I won't. If you vote against him, I will personally fund challengers to primary you in your next election, and I will enlist hundreds of thousands to join me.
This is the woman who's considering running for governor of California. So she's threatening all those people. And don't get me wrong, politicians, a lot of them are just corrupt as hell anyway. But she makes this public message that I will come out and get you if you don't vote for him. What the fuck is this? Blackmail? For someone who came from a family and she discussed that she grew up having nothing, once you got that money, you seem to be fitting just right in. With the attitude and all the behavior. This is why I continue to say when people are like, oh, I grew up poor. You're not poor now, buddy. That is not okay. That's RFK's space. You see what I'm saying? So that's what they're really about. This is why I told people do not trust that dude. But people got googly eyed. People were like, oh my gosh, he's a Kennedy. Or people were like, just fell for it. They just did not want to push back on it because they fell in love with the personality. And a lot of times in elections, this happens where people stop paying attention to the policies or the platforms, especially if they flip-flop, and they fall in love with the personality. So it's no longer about the message anymore. It's just about, oh, I like this person so they can do no wrong. And when you get to that point, it's very dangerous. There is no hero politician. We are the heroes because we come together as a community and organize and we save ourselves. People are asking, is RFK Jr. qualified for the position? I believe he is qualified for the position. But I still think it is very problematic when he says, no, well, you shouldn't have health care as a right. That right there lets you know who's going to get healthy. So that's the problem. And I called it out during his campaign. I was like, he's talking about all this healthcare stuff, but he doesn't think that everybody should have healthcare. So in that sense, he may not be doing the bidding of big pharma by pushing back against the jab and all that stuff and wanting to sue them. But when he tells you that everybody shouldn't have healthcare, he's also helping big pharma because they don't want you to have it either. May I remind you where that came from? Originally, once again, just a reminder, the reason why we did not have universal healthcare, the original reason was because they did not want Black people to have it. I would think that someone that had a Black agenda that was a part of his campaign when he was running would know that and would realize how problematic that statement is. So I go back to this again and I say, stop saying healthcare is a right. Healthcare is a necessity. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. If you don't have your health, you may have problems at work. And what was interesting to me is that Some people, they're such RFK stands. Some of the same people who agreed with Luigi Mangione and said, yes, this is a problem. Yes, we need healthcare. The moment there was pushback from Bernie Sanders towards RFK about this issue, they came right in on social media and started defending him and saying, no, it's not a right. But you were just saying it was a right a month ago when you were defending Luigi. That right there lets me know some of you not serious and you just in love with personalities. Oh, hells no. Let's go to some of the comments here. All right. Shout out to Martin Goldberg for becoming a member. Whoop, whoop. My end. All right. Thank you, John. The rehabilitation of W is pissing me off. He should have been impeached. Just because he hates Donald Trump doesn't make him a good person. Interesting. Thank you, Jasmine. Does RFK Jr. also have smoke for nicotine lobbyists who promote lifetime smokers? Nope, just the individual. That's a good point, Jasmine. Thank you, Barron. Now that Biden is gone, Bernie found his voice again. Now he talks about healthcare being a human right. Yeah, well, he talked about it before in interviews, but he didn't have that same tone with Democrats, who the majority of Democrats in Congress don't support universal healthcare. So he doesn't have that tone with them. Thank you, David. Healthcare is a necessity. Yes, Sabby, our language must evolve. Rights aren't rights if they can be taken away. They're privileges. George Carlin, that's right. Thank you, Brown Eyes. How come we cannot have the insurance that Congress has? Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe Congress should have to know what it's like to not have health insurance or to be underinsured. Thanks, Egg. Cancer is so arbitrary, it could come from anywhere. That's true. Thank you, Raven. As long as we operate out of capitalism, we will never have what we need, right or necessity. Capitalism and racism go hand in hand. Thank you, Just Trash. People need to know that most basic to anarchist theory is to build an economy that is set on Maslow. It's not chaos. The politicians simply want the power with them. Money is power. We want it equal. Thank you, Jasmine. Also, that note about Cancer Alley you brought up reminds me of Kalamazoo, Michigan is being neglected by its Democrat governor and other state leaders. And Flint, Michigan. And Flint. Thank you, Charlie. 100% get RFK Jr.'s ass, Sabrina. Thank you, Gene. Sabby for president. No, thank you. No, thank you here. And you sent it twice, but thanks, but no thanks. That is not my lane. Eric said, Sabby, please be my VP. No, thank you. No, thank you, Eric. Thanks, David. Bernie only mentions UHC when it's convenient. Yeah, I saw people saying that online today, too. Thanks, Raven. Michigan desperately needs mass transit. Thank you, Roger. Sabs, scroll down to the horizontal blue graph bar that says source of funds, campaign committee 2019-2024 on Bernie, open secret, shows percentage of small dollars. Yeah, I think I already showed that. Thank you, Charlie. No worries about who profits from jabs with Medicare for all. True. Thanks, Yala. Sabby, new money is more evil than old money. Ooh, you ain't said nothing but a word. And of course, Charlie, and nationalized pharma research and manufacturing. Thank you so much for that. Thanks, Jaden. Did you hear Trump sending immigrants to Gitmo? Yes. We're going to get into that a little bit in a minute. And let's get the comment on Rumble. Hey. All righty. Thank you for the Rumble rant, Nocturnal Human. I sent the Rumble rant literally the last minute on RBN stream earlier. I don't mind if you missed it. Do you still get the money at RBN? That's all I really care about. Hope you get it. Thanks. We should. It happens sometimes because there may be a delay. Thanks, RB Ham. Colonel Douglas McGregor has stated that women make excellent pilots and that they test better than men in multitasking abilities. The Russians always bragged about how good their female pilots were. That's interesting. Thanks, Roger. Guess we can expect this guy as HHS secretary to issue out federal waivers to those states to wish to pursue their own single payer healthcare program. RFK question. Aren't we all already paying for other people's health care with Medicare? Aren't we all already paying for weapons aid to Israel? Can we also stop paying for the single payer as well? People push Medicare for all CBIs anyway. Worry about waivers later. Good point. Good point. And thank you, Skylar. A black senator called RFK out for saying black people need less jabs than whites because we have stronger immune systems. He ain't qualified. Jesus Christ. He says the craziest shit. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. It reminds me of the rhetoric that doctors were teaching in med school, which was that black people don't feel pain. Crazy, Miss Nan. Crazy. Okie dokies. All right, let's move on to the next story. Smash the like if you haven't done so. Thanks, fam. Bam. And let's go to the next story. This one's going to be interesting, fam. You know, since the whole deportation started under Donald Trump, there have been a lot of like fear mongering and a lot of questions. And one of the things that was brought up was that, well, Black Americans, you better sit back and be quiet because you could be deported too. Let's see if that's true. We're going to take a deep dive into the 14th Amendment, why it was created, and then who was it really created for? We're also going to journey into a little bit here to see why the DOJ is also trying to see if they can deport Native Americans, which God knows, how can you deport them from their own land? And I don't even know where that came from, but we're going to dive into what the language says and if they should be concerned. There are already Native Americans that they've had ICE agents come up to them to try to detain them. So let's get into it, folks. We're going to take a deep dive and we're going to start what this statement here from Donald Trump, starting with Black Americans first here. Who was the 14th Amendment written for? Listen to what Donald Trump says here, because I think a lot of people need to hear this.
We are fighting hard to get birthright citizenship or automatic citizenship for the children of illegal aliens. That's another way. It's automatic citizenship for children of illegal aliens. That's the other term that they use, which is actually more accurate, more understandable. And it's ridiculous. We're the only country that has it, and certainly the only country that has it to that extent. And it wasn't meant, if you look, it was really meant for children of slaves. This is when it happened. The children of slaves, it was not meant for everyone to come into our country by airplane or charging across the borders from all over the world and think they're going to become citizens. It's not meant for that. It wasn't meant for that. And hopefully at some point the courts will understand that without having to go through a whole big deal. This was meant for the children of slaves. And look at the timing of it and you'll see. And I hope judges will understand that. And it has to stop because it's really hurting our country very badly. We are fighting.
Okay. Did everybody hear what he said? The 14th Amendment was for the children of slaves, for American descendants of slavery. Well, let's take a deep dive into that. Because again, I got to look up my own shit because, politicians say anything. Where did this all come from? Where did the 14th Amendment come from? To see where that came from, we need to dive into the Dred Scott decision. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here. Does the 14th Amendment guarantee birthright citizenship? Listen to this, guys.
The reason why this became important is because of Dred Scott. Dred Scott is the decision in which Chief Justice Taney held that both slaves and freed slaves could never be citizens of the United States, could not be legal persons, even though they were born on the territory of the United States. So Dred Scott itself rejected the birthright citizenship rule. The North, at great cost and lives, would then overrule Dred Scott once they won the war, and after the war enact 3 amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which I would say at the very least restored the rights of people before to birthright citizenship. Think about what...
Okay, that part right there. So again, this overturned that Dred Scott decision. So that part there is really important, right? Now, we need to look at the amendment. We need to see exactly what it says because I haven't looked at this in a long time, but this will be important when we get to the piece about what is happening to Native Americans and what the DOJ is trying to do. So listen to this. There are 5 sections. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This part here is very important because this is what the DOJ is starting to focus on. Are citizens of the U.S. and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the U.S., nor shall any state deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction, there's that jurisdiction again, the equal protection of our laws. Part 2, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. This part here is important. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive judicial officers of the state or the legislator, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in proportion with the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. So remember back then, it was just they were just talking about men. And notice how they mention electors, right? Because when you vote for the president, remember, you're not really voting for the president and the vice president. You're voting for the electors. Let's go to part 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the U.S. or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the U.S. or as a member of any state support the Constitution of the U.S. shall engage in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof, but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. And then 4 and 5. The validity of the public debt of the U.S. authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid or insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. or any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. And 5, the Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So that is the 14th Amendment. And I thought it was important to look at that because, again, we go back to the Dred Scott decision. And we see here that, again, this was overturning that, and it made it very clear who this was for. Now, here's the problem. We pop out here. When there was news that the deportations were happening or was going to happen, when Trump said he was going to do mass deportations, a number of people on social media said, Black people, you better get ready because they're going to get you out of here too. No, because those of us who are descendants of slavery, we are protected by the 14th Amendment. Now, had there been no 14th Amendment and the Dred Scott decision would still be the law of the land, we would be screwed. Because the Dred Scott decision said that we were not citizens So that's important. Now, what Donald Trump did here is called delineation. He delineated among the Black diaspora. And I know some people take issue with this and they have a problem with it, yada, yada. But when it comes to certain legal issues, this is important. The reason why it's important is the same thing for reparations. This is why I continue to tell you, you can't base reparations on race. It has to be based on status. The reparations claim on race, that will be overthrown. So the way that you do it legally is to base it on status. And if you go back and you look at General Sherman's promise, that was to slaves and their descendants, 40 acres and a mule. That's not to everybody in the diaspora. And when I say this, sometimes people's feelings get hurt. I didn't write the law. So it's important that you understand the law of the land. Yes, Nene is correct. Yvette Carnell and ADOS was the first to stress lineage and delineation. Right. It's important. People don't like it. Some people get mad. But again, I didn't make the law. So what that does show you is that Donald Trump and all his craziness and ridiculousness and foolishness, even Donald Trump understands that there's a difference. So when you're looking at things legally, you need to know that. So what did he just do? Now, I see a lot of people get upset online when people who are American descendants of slavery make that same distinction that Donald Trump just made. People are getting mad at Black Americans making that distinction. But when Donald Trump said it, they're like, oh, okay. So what's going on there? So we cannot be deported. People need to stop spreading that lie. Now, to add to this, though, here's another problem. Because now the DOJ is referring to the same amendment that I just read to you, and they are trying to say that Native Americans can be deported. Let's get into this. This is crazy. This is insane. Excluding Indians, Trump administration questions Native Americans' birthright citizenship in court. Oh my God. Here we go, guys. This is crazy. This is insane. But listen to this. The DOJ called into question the citizenship of Native Americans born in the U.S. under the 14th Amendment, citing the 19th century law that excluded Native Americans from birthright citizenship. In a case on Trump's birthright citizenship executive order coming out of D.C., attorneys quote the 14th Amendment, which reads that all persons born or naturalized in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, there's that term again, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, and hang their one on the arguments on the phrase subject to jurisdiction thereof. This is what they're focusing on. Under the plain terms of the clause, birth in the U.S. does not by itself entitle a person to citizenship. The person must also be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So they go into this piece here. They are citing a Civil Rights Act of 1866, which predates the 14th Amendment by 2 years. The Justice Department attorneys specifically cite a section of the act that notes that all persons born in the U.S. and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States. Does everybody see how they're paying very close attention to the text? The administration then goes on to argue that the 14th Amendment language, the phrase, the subject to jurisdiction thereof, is best understood to exclude the same individuals who were excluded by Act, i.e., those who are subject to any foreign power and Indians not taxed. They are referring to a Supreme Court case titled Elk versus Wilkins. The DOJ's attorneys, they are arguing whether or not Native Americans should be entitled to a birthright citizenship. Later in their argument, citing Supreme Court case Elk versus Wilkins, in which the court decided that because members of Indian tribes owe immediate allegiance to their tribes, they are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are not constitutionally entitled to citizenship. Fam. Oh, hells no. People who are actually indigenous to the land. Where would you even, first of all, they're indigenous to the land. You should not deport them, period. Two, where would you send them to? They're from here. Their lineage was here before it was even the United. What? But do you see how they're reading through all of this? And this piece right here, the United States connection with the children of illegal aliens and temporary visitors is weaker than its connection with members of Indian tribes. If the latter link is insufficient for birthright citizenship, the former certainly is, the Trump administration argued. So if you guys don't believe me, this person posted something and I want you to see what they're trying to break down. It says here, the Dems party are the cops of Uvalde. That's the name of their group. But they said the text of the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act reads as follows. Be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the U.S. in Congress assembled, that all non-citizen Indians born within the territorial limits of the U.S. be and they are hereby declared to be citizens of the U.S., provided that granting of such citizenship shall not in any manner impair or otherwise affect the right of any Indian to tribal or other property. This was approved on June 2nd, 1924. So like I said, hells no. But this is what they go on to say. Zeneb said exactly, they can't even make this asinine argument. And the commenter responds and says they can't make the argument for the purposes of taking away Indian citizenship. But the argument is being made that the reason why the 1924 Act was necessary in the first place is because birthright didn't apply to Indians. Back then, they were still calling them Indians. Fam. It's getting messy, okay? It is hot out in these streets. That's why I told you the theme is, oh, hells no. But they are already, you guys know there are some Native Americans that have already been approached by ICE. I kid you not. So Jordan Sheraton called this out. Listen to this.
I was contacted. I was not the only person contacted. Just so you know, there were others who were contacted. And there was an individual who was detained in Phoenix, an individual who is a Navajo male, was detained in Phoenix. Apparently it happened yesterday, and was released sometime this morning. The detainment was done by ICE, and it was a scary, traumatic experience.
This is happening in America. This is racial profiling on steroids. It is disgusting and vile. This is not about keeping America safe or the integrity and sacred border. This is just about terrorizing brown people, terrorizing people with accents, getting rid of the other.
There are a number of videos I've seen as well on TikTok of people being approached. I agree with you. Totally says it makes no sense. No, it doesn't. And the way that Native Americans are treated in this country anyway is absolutely ridiculous, considering it was their land. But I don't want to end with no solution, right? So what can you do about it? This guy brought up really good points. Please pass this on to everyone that you know that is indigenous. He's going to tell you what you can do. This is really important.
So the DOJ argued that Native Americans don't have birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment, which they do. Now, that being said, if you are a Native American, you do need to be carrying some sort of tribal ID or U.S. ID on you. Apparently, several Native Americans have been detained for multiple hours without their cell phones or a way for them to contact their families or their tribes. Now, the tribe that's been most impacted by this is the Navajo Nation, and apparently this has sparked a lot of fear, especially among tribal members who live in urban areas and might struggle with getting them the proper documentation. Now, several of these Native Americans did provide documentation of either a state ID or something called a CIB, which is a certificate of Indian blood. But apparently ICE is not recognizing these documents as valid proof of citizenship.
Does everybody hear this? So why do you have to walk around with this in your pocket or this in your wallet? Like, this is insane. Like, again, why? I mean, how would you guys feel if you were walking down the street? Let's say you just went for a walk and you said, I'm just going to leave my purse at home. I'm just going for a walk around the block. And you get stopped by a police officer and they're like, where's your ID? This is a mess.
Native Americans, people who were here long before us, people who belong here more than any of us, are being detained and questioned about being deported, and they're not accepting tribal proof, ID, whatever, as valid. Look, I'm just going to call this right now. Again, like I said in an earlier video, the criminals, the predators, all of those people, get them the heck out of here. In fact, take American ones with you. Get them out of here too. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits coming from this when it comes to American citizens and Native Americans. Now, that being said, if you are Native American, please make sure that you are carrying some form of ID that will prevent you from having to be detained for X number of hours. Anyways, to stay up to date, make sure to hit that follow button and drop your thoughts about all this in the comments.
Yeah, guys. I mean, make sure it's crazy, but make sure you have your papers on you. MBD said your papers and your passport are not in order. 30 days in Zakula. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. But that's scary stuff. I also saw there was a video where, let me put this up here, a woman who was Puerto Rican, like they tried to detain someone who's Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. Like, I don't know, man. It's scary. It's scary. But I think it is important that we broke that down so now people can stop with the rumors and the myth about the 14th Amendment. And I hope now that you guys understand like what predated the 14th Amendment, what it was a response to, and that you understand. So please pass this on to your friends. Black Americans who are descendants of slaves cannot be deported because of the 14th Amendment. Now, if they were to remove the 14th Amendment, then maybe we can talk. But right now, that's not the case. If you do know someone who's indigenous, please let them know to have documentation on them. They shouldn't have to do that, but this is where we are. Crazy stuff, man. Thank you, DP Photography LLC. What happens if they say you have to prove you are a descendant of freedmen/slaves? Many of us can't and don't even know how. That's actually not true. You can just trace back your lineage and put it this way. Were your parents born here? Were your grandparents born here? Were your great-grandparents born here? Then most likely you would. And this information is actually public. Dr. Sandy Darity said you can find the information at the library. So a lot of us that are American descendants of slavery, we mainly come from states like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, like that, like typically that area. Although there was slavery in states like Rhode Island as well. A lot of people don't know this, but Rhode Island had I think they were third at one point during the transatlantic slave trade, but you can find it. The Oracle says, what's apparent to me is that white America understands that the Constitution was meant for them and they interpret it as such. That part. Ashura said, that happened to me 3 weeks ago, Sabrina, when I was entering my driveway, stopped by the cops. Isn't this crazy? Crazy stuff. Thank you, Roger. We get asked for ID by the police all the time. Driver's license. It's crazy stuff. Let's get the comment on Rumble. Thank you. Hey. Thank you, Nocturnal Human. Mexican Americans like myself are Native Americans. My native Yaqui ancestry comes from California. Somehow I'm viewed as foreign. My whole family are American, born for generations. That's another thing too, you know. Thank you, Dave. I'm throwing this $2 in the jar for Eric T. Red and his work. I'm sure Eric appreciates that. Yeah. It's crazy times, fam. All righty, guys. Thank you so much. Smash that like button if you're new. Don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we're moving on to the next topic. This one is less cumbersome, so we like to switch things up around here. This was interesting. Krystal Ball from Breaking Points actually called out AOC in the interview that AOC had with Jon Stewart. And Krystal Ball is basically saying that AOC is being very strong-willed now that Republicans are in power, but she wasn't willing to be this way before. You got to check this out, guys. I think people are getting tired of the performative behavior. Listen to this.
Case. AOC is one of the people who has asserted herself more. Jon Stewart had her on, and she made some interesting comments about insider trading, but also some interesting comments about Joe Biden on his way out of office being like, oh, there's a problem with the oligarchy. Really? Is there? Tell me more about that. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
There need to be Democrats who walk the walk and talk the talk. There is an insane amount of hypocrisy, and the hypocrisy is what gets exploited to use the cynicism. And wherever there's a hypocritical window, for example, I think one of the most biggest examples of this is insider trading in Congress. Like,
dude, I don't know if do I give snaps? I don't know what the kids do anymore, but like, dude, it is that's so crazy.
It's so crazy.
It's crazy.
It's Nancy Pelosi. We all know, right? We all know Nancy Pelosi's doing the trading and stuff like that. And yeah, that is crazy. And that should be illegal. Like, it's insane that they're able to get away with that. But they're able to get away with it because there isn't as much opposition against them, right? Now, AOC is saying this now, but that's because Kamala lost. If the Democrats would have won, AOC wouldn't be talking this way about the Democratic Party. She also criticized Joe Biden in this interview with Jon Stewart as well, but she didn't criticize him last year, right before the presidential election. She spoke very highly of Joe Biden. She spoke very highly of Kamala Harris and said she was working around the clock tirelessly for a ceasefire. We all knew that wasn't true. But she spoke very highly of them, defended them. She came after Jill Stein and attacked her when it sounds like obviously she should have been focusing on her own party and their own problems. Maybe if she would have focused more time on the Democrats and what they were doing wrong, who knows? Maybe things could have turned out differently, but that's not what she chose to do. Spending all that time attacking Jill Stein, which I think was a direct order. I think she was ordered to do that. Spending all that time doing that. And for what? For what? Could have been using that time to try to make your party stronger. These are the things to pay attention to, guys.
It's crazy. I mean, like, this is the thing. It's like people think that everyday people are stupid. I'm like, do you all really think that people don't see this shit? Like,
they sit on a committee, they get information about a drug or a contract or a thing. They immediately make a call. The stockbroker changes things and their portfolio swells.
Explode.
Oh, sorry there, guys.
Right?
Like, of course.
You're regulating the market that you're trading on.
Exactly. And
you run the casino.
And then we're supposed to act like money only corrupts Republicans? Give me fucking break. Biden on his way out, it was only on his way out that he was like, this country's controlled by oligarchs. Bye. Like, we could have used that energy a couple years ago.
But we could have used that energy from people like AOC when the Democrats were in power, but instead she defended them. Don't forget, it took activists confronting her in person, asking her why she hadn't called it a genocide yet, for her to finally call it a genocide. So you can point fingers at Joe Biden and you can call out, his issues, his inconsistencies, and his failures, but you supported and endorsed all of those failures and all those inconsistencies in almost every interview that I saw or that we covered on here. And on the Democratic National Convention stage, like, you supported those things. You were going along with what the party was doing because you're trying to make a political space for yourself within that party. So the reality is the game that AOC plays, and you'll see this with others as well, when the Democrats are in power, they're silent. When the Democrats are not in power, all of a sudden they're like, let's fight. We got this energy. Let's talk shit. Let's let everything fall out. Let me tell you how I really feel. And once the Democrats win again, they'll go back to being sheep. Listen to what Krystal says, and then I'm going to tell you, I want to take you back to what happened in 2018, just to remind you.
Accurate on all of that.
Isn't this a little too late, though?
Well,
all this Biden talk, it's like you endorsed Biden, okay?
Not
you
only
not
that.
defended Biden.
She and Bernie actually, they were in the we're all in with Biden here to the end.
They were more with Biden than.
Yeah. Hold on one second. I have to pause it here. There we go. They were more with Biden than they were with just fast forward here. That part. Okay.
Here to
they
the
were
end.
more with Biden than like Nancy Pelosi. So that's where part of it is just like, shut up. All right.
Well, here's the part to me. I think there's a few points she makes that I think are important. Number one, about the way that hypocrisy is used against Democrats, and understandably so. I mean, she's talking about the insider trading piece. Also talking about, you had a lot of people, including Joe Biden, who were like, Trump's a fascist. And then they're like, welcome to the White, welcome home, Donald Trump. And people are not going to believe you next time you raise the alarm about something. If you are not acting like this was really bad that he got elected. And I, still think the things that I said before were true. And this is a real threat. And
pause there for a second. So the hypocrisy from the Democratic Party, also the billionaire class, right? Like, so there's all this talk about the Republicans are lined up with all these billionaires, and Donald Trump has these billionaires right next to him in his administration. But the Democratic Party lines up with billionaires too. They just don't do it so much out in the open. I mean, they're buddy with Bill Gates and George Soros. They're team billionaire too. That's why we don't get anything. Because they're doing what works for the billionaire class and what works for Wall Street, right? So they're aligned with that too. So that's a big one. I always try to get people to focus back on the money, because the big one there is, how can you call out the other party for aligning with billionaires when you also align with billionaires? There may be a couple of people in the Democratic Party that don't take, billionaire money, but the party as a whole is totally fine with taking billionaire money. So both parties do it. Now, to that point, AOC could have called this out during Biden-Harris administration, but she didn't. She defended them at every cause. Like, even when they were blatantly in the wrong, she continued to toe the party line. So what it shows people is that she's not consistent on the issues, and that the issues seem to matter the most to her when the opposition is in power. So when Republicans are in power, that's when it matters more to AOC to talk about these issues. And I want to bring you back 2018. A lot of times people forget that when just as Democrats started, remember when AOC said, we're going to go in there and we're going to, fight back, protesting inside Nancy Pelosi's office. When Rashida Tlaib said, we're going to impeach him. Remember that? This was all during Trump's presidency. See, sometimes people forget the squad, when they got elected, the first four, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Ayanna Pressley, they came out swinging when they first got into office, but that's because Donald Trump was in the White House. So it's easier to appear to look like a fighter, and I'm going to tear it all down, when you're fighting back against the opposition party. Where we started to see the change was when Trump lost in 2020 and Biden won. And then you see that Biden was willing to keep some of Donald Trump's policies, especially some of the tax policies. Biden was not willing to move on. What happened to the healthcare thing, right? Biden was not willing to move on universal healthcare, but he also didn't end up expanding Obamacare either. So there's a lot of things that happen, right? The genocide is a big one, right? I mean, I never thought in my life I would see that. So when Democrats were doing such heinous crimes, they never had that same, with the exception of Rashida with the genocide, they never seemed to have that same type of fight because it was their party that was doing it. And I don't think the Democratic Party can ever come back from that. I really don't think. It's kind of hard to come back from what happened in Gaza. Number one, too many people know about it. There's that. And this is the game that is played. So now that Trump is in the White House again, now they're going to fight. Don't forget something that Kyle Kulinski said. He said him and Cenk Uygur started Justice Democrats because they thought that the Democratic Party was so embarrassing to lose to someone like a Donald Trump. So they started Justice Democrats as a response to Donald Trump. And Justice Democrats were supposed to go into the Democratic Party and it was going to be a hostile takeover during Trump's presidency. I think some people didn't imagine that Joe Biden would be this bad. I did. And so since Joe Biden was so bad, now those same people are supposed to have that same response towards the Biden-Harris administration, and they did not. And I think that really showed things to a lot of people.
So, to see Democrats the way that they by and large responded, which is to be like, yeah, we'll see, and maybe we'll work with them and whatever. It's like, this is a wildly different energy than you were bringing up until 5 seconds ago. So even though your point about her and Biden is a correct one, and it's like, okay, well, where was that energy critiquing him previously? She is right in what she's saying here about, the Democratic response this time around to Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when you're thinking about how this is all shaping up, I think it all comes to credibility. And say whatever you want about Trump, and he's switched his tune on many issues.
Yeah.
But his core thing about immigration and trade, shit's been saying since 1976. He's got a consistency of message, and even when he's inconsistent, it's within his Trumpian MAGA framework. As you always point out, what are the things people like about Bernie Sanders? Basically been saying the same stuff since he's been running for office and was it Burlington mayor. The problem I have here with the AOCs and all of that is you both try to be consistent on the issue. And let's be clear, she actually has been. She co-sponsored that legislation with Matt Gaetz on stock trading. So I'm not calling her out on whatever on this specifically, but she's a capital D Democrat, and that works for her sometimes. But it didn't, when you have that inability to call out your own side when it's happening in the midst of the big existential question of the time, do we support Biden or do we ditch Biden? I don't know if a lot of people can have a lot of trust with you on this issue.
No, they can't. And that's something I wanted to point to, is that's when the real challenge comes in, right? Because when I saw that interview of AOC with Jon Stewart, I was like, oh, hell's no. Because you should have said that before, but she's playing a game. Her game is to advance herself within the Democratic Party, maybe become like a future Nancy Pelosi, then eventually run for president. Who knows? But that's her goal. And if she pushes too hard, like let's say Cori Bush may have, she'll be gone just like Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman, etc. So she knows that. So she's going to try to, toe that line. But if we want to talk about hypocrisy, AOC, I think it's important to mention that you sat up there and you conflated in a webinar anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. So you want to talk about hypocrisy, but you got your own hypocrisy that you need to come to some type of Jesus moment with. Same way with the way that she's voting for the dangerous definition of anti-Semitism when Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar did not. So you can't just point your fingers at Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi's insider trading, because your hypocrisy is there too. But that's where it comes from. The real challenge is to see, can they push back against these issues when it happens in their own party? And I think what we saw over the Biden-Harris administration is that for the most part, no, they don't. They can't, they won't, and they don't. So what are they there for? You don't hear much from Justice Democrats these days either.
So trust is everything in politics. I mean, why did Kamala at the end of the day lose? Her whole border hawk shtick, people were like, I don't believe you because of all this crap that you said in 2019. I think that you either still are open borders or maybe worse, you don't believe anything. And that's not a problem. That's not a version that vibes with Trump, who has been 100% consistent, at least on illegal immigration. And that's mostly the valence of where people decided to fall with. So with AOC, with a lot of these progressive Democrats, it's like, I think Biden was like poison for them because they both had to defend him. But even in the times when they knew that he was being bad, they had to stay silent. They lost a lot of trust. And so it's like, it's easy to say when you're out of power. And by the way, of course, this applies to Republicans too, right? This is the eternal problem of the insider-outsider dynamic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I see, sure, we're about to play Charlemagne. He's like, people should be more like AOC. I'm like, should they? Really? Like, I don't think that she's been a very successful politician over the last 10 years. I would say she's actually one of the most failed politicians of the last 10 years.
I mean,
she's voted as one of the most ineffective members of Congress. I'm not making that up. Like, if you look at the data, she's voted as one of the most ineffective members of Congress.
Here's what went wrong for her. She came in as a true outsider.
Yeah.
Takes out Joe Crowley, who was, in leadership and close to Pelosi and all these people, and just sort of took a seat for granted. And she comes in and she knocks him out, and it's an earthquake, right? She decides before she's sworn in, she's going to protest outside of Nancy Pelosi's office, and make this statement. And there were two different pathways, right? One was to maintain that outsider status and really be that bomb thrower and leverage the social media following that she had and continues to have, by the way, and use that grassroots power against the established Democratic Party power. She, step by step, chose the other path, which was to try to play the inside game. And we just really saw an example of how that was a completely failed tactic. I mean, she wanted to be ranking member on oversight. And she pledged, reportedly, as part of that, like, if you let me do this, I am not going to primary any Democratic incumbents, which is an extraordinary concession, okay? Extraordinary concession to basically say, like, I'm going to lay down my arms against any critique I have against any of y'all in the Democratic caucus. And they still blocked her and put in Jerry Connolly, who, is literally suffering with cancer and is aged. And nobody's idea of a firebrand, right?
And this point I want to bring up as well. When AOC beat Joe Crowley, you know who helped her win? You know who was part of the grassroots that was on the ground knocking on doors? Green Party members. The same party that AOC was attacking last year. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of the people that were helping AOC when she ran for Congress the first time were Green Party members. She even went out to help Jabari. She helped Jabari Brisport when he was running as a Green. There's pictures of her doing this. This is what I was trying to tell people. She had no party with those Green Party members when they were helping her. And then she won and didn't take some of those people with her. Like I think she said that she would. So if this party is as bad as you think it is, AOC, you had no problem using their labor to help you get elected. That's the main reason why AOC was able to gain as much traction as she did when she was running, because there were so many Green Party members that believed in her and were helping her. And this is how she repaid them. A lot of people don't know about that. Ask Nico House. Nico's very familiar. Ask Roger Meadows, who may be in the chat. Roger Meadows, a lot of people don't know this. She was working with the Greens. And that is the way that she repays them, by coming after Jill Stein, saying that the Green Party is predatory and all this. You weren't worried about them being predatory when they were helping you get elected. And then once she was in there, she didn't need them anymore to help her get elected, because Trump was president and she was very much like a firebrand at that point, being very vocal against Donald Trump. So people just came back out to support her. She didn't need them the second time around. Things we got to pay attention to, guys.
Nobody's idea of a firebrand for a position that actually made sense for AOC, because oversight, it's all about like getting that clip that goes viral and sharing it on social media, whatever. It really was a good position for her within the context of the Democratic Party. And even in that, she's blocked. So I think you're right, Sagar, that ultimately the test will come. Like, now it's kind of comfortable to have these critiques of, look, Joe Biden is done, he's out. It's all easy to see in retrospect, the way this all went sideways, et cetera, et cetera. Are you going to have that energy when it's difficult, when it goes against where the party is and what they're doing? Because, that's when it really counts. Like, we could have used that voice back when the Democrats were like, we're just not going to have a primary. Forget about the Biden-Kamala thing, because I think you could justify that when it turns out that Kamala actually on economics was going to be worse than Biden, like with regard to antitrust, SEC, crypto, possibly labor was not going to be as good as Biden. You could justify it from an ideological perspective, even though Biden obviously is too old, blah, blah, blah. But the real moment was back when Democrats said, we're going to cancel the primary. We're not going to have any debates. We're not going to have any choice. And that there was none of that energy from anyone at that point. So I think that is the question. If she wants to, and I think she does, if she wants to be a actual leader of a reformed, different Democratic Party, she's going to have to say things like this when it is difficult, when it is uncomfortable, when it requires her to bump up against her friends and colleagues in this institution. We teased the Charlemagne clip, so let me go ahead and
okay, and we can stop it up there. But the point is that she's not going to do that because she doesn't want to lose her seat. Because look at where that got Cori Bush. Cori Bush was the only one till the end still standing up for defund the police. And they said, boo, you got to go. It wasn't just because of Gaza, by the way. She spoke out against Gaza and was one of the first squad members, I think, along with Rashida Tlaib, to speak out against it. But it wasn't just that issue. They had already had it with Cori because she was still trying to speak up against, defund the police, et cetera, speaking about the needs of people in her community, which we all know coming from like the Ferguson, like in St. Louis area. We all remember what happened in Ferguson with the police and continues to happen in Ferguson with the police. So I think that's the big thing, guys. So when you see these things happen, I just want you to be aware that it's all a game, right? So now what you're going to see is that the Democrats are going to look like they're real fiery, spicy people. You got Ro Khanna going on to all these different podcasts, doing his podcast tour, etc. Everybody's going to seem like they're ready to fight now because Trump is in the White House. But just remember, what did they say last year, right? Notice how they didn't speak up last year. And I say that because that's important, because that right there tells you that when the time gets rough, they're not going to fight. Let's go to the comments here. And we got one more story for you, ladies and gents. Hey. I was just going to the comments here. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm not looking at the same ones. Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. AOC acts like she's not in office. Fake. Linda said, I jumped off the Dem train because of Gaza. Yeah, there's quite a bit of people that have reached out to me that are, were like, nope, that's it. Thank you, Jasmine. AOC's getting called out like this is the best laugh I had on my birthday. Oh, happy birthday! Like she is capable of feeling shame. Joe says AOC is there to stop a third party from developing. Thanks, Roger. Rescue politician integrity and abolish all parties. Thank you, Amelie. Keep on the truth. You guys are doing a damn good job. Much respect. Free Palestine, free all people. And thank you, Roger. Yep, Justin sent me the picture of AOC as green in 2017. That's right. Okay. Smash that like button, guys. And we're moving on to the final story. So, continuing on with Oh Hells No. It appears that Jim Acosta has decided to quit and did so on air. Jim Acosta, a commentator at CNN News, he's been there for years, quitting, representing a growing trend that we've seen over the past year and a half of corporate media commentators either being fired or choosing to resign because of the direction that corporate media is going into. Now, from what I understand, Jim Acosta, it appears that he was about to be demoted. You do have to remember, I ran that story the other couple of days ago that CNN was laying off over 200 employees. Their ratings have been tanking. You guys get the picture. And so Jim Acosta seemed to have been one of the ones that was affected or may have been affected by that. And he was about to be demoted. And I guess Jim said that he's not going out like that. So let's see that conversation and how crazy and bizarre this is. Jim Acosta right here, sounding off on CNN one last time.
I just wanted to end today's show by thanking all of the wonderful people who work behind the scenes at this network. You may have seen some reports about me and the show. And after giving all of this some careful consideration and weighing an alternative time slot CNN offered me, I've decided to move on. I am grateful to CNN for the nearly 18 years I've spent here doing the news. People often ask me if the highlight of my career at CNN was at the White House covering Donald Trump. Actually, no. That moment came here when I covered former President Barack Obama's trip to Cuba in 2016 and had the chance to question the dictator there, Raul Castro, about the island's political prisoners. As the son of a Cuban refugee, I took home this lesson. It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future.
So that part right there leads me to believe that CNN is once again moving in another direction. You guys know that they've had leadership changes over the past 2 years and decided to try to bring on conservative voices as well as, of course, the liberal voices to try to, I guess, balance things out on CNN. And I think they thought maybe that would help with the ratings. Not really. They hosted, the Trump-Biden debate. I think that was supposed to help them as well. And of course, their ratings started to tank again after the presidential election results. And it sounds like to me what Jim Acosta is alluding to is that maybe CNN is going to take the same approach that Morning Joe has decided to take, which is to not go so hard on Donald Trump. That's what it sounds like to me. But there's also the fact that they did want to demote him as well. So don't forget that. Let him continue on.
One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope. Even if you have to get out your phone, record that message. I will not give in to the lies. I will not give in to the fear. Post it on your social media so people can hear from you too. I'll have more to say about my plans in the coming days, but until then, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It has been an honor to be welcomed into your home for all these years. That's the news. Reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta.
So it was interesting. He said, I won't give in to the lies. You've been lying for years. Corporate media lies all the time. You guys been lying for years. Now all of a sudden you don't want to give in to the lies. So again, that also makes me wonder, were there talks with execs and leadership at CNN that maybe if there are certain stories that cover Trump in such a way, they're not going to cover it? I wonder if that was part of this as well. So he's saying, I won't give in to the lies, but you gave into it for all those years. So whatever, Jim. Bye, Jimbo. Bye, Jim. And it's interesting. He talked about the highlighted moment there of him and Obama, said that was the highlight, covering that. Jim, you bring up those deportations under Barack Obama. Barack Obama deported more people. A lot of people don't talk about this because they're like, no, it's Democrats, so they'll give it a hush. And no, they all weren't criminals either, by the way. This is something I've covered before on the show. When you look at the numbers, Barack Obama deported more people. But the corporate media algo wants you to focus on Donald Trump because that's more outrage. But they did not have that outrage when Obama was doing the same thing. So these are things that we have to call out. There's a little bit more detail here as they say, peace out, Jim. CNN anchor Jim Acosta to step down. The network wanted to move Mr. Acosta to the midnight time slot, a backwater in cable television news. I have to say something. I'm sorry. It's funny. Whenever they move you to midnight, honey, you really, really demoted. Like there's demotion in corporate media and then there's demoted. Like moving you to midnight is like, we don't want nobody to see what you got to think, but we might get backlash if we fire you. So we move you to the midnight spot where most people are going to be asleep and they're not going to watch you anyway. Yes, Lala. Damn, not the midnight time slot. It's like the people, like the radio DJs. It's like the radio DJs that come on really late at night when most people are asleep. This is Sabrinasalvati, and this is Late Night Slow Jams. That one, it's that shift that most people just don't listen to. That's usually where they'll start the newbies. A newbie will start out at that graveyard shift, and then you kind of got to work your way up to get a better spot, right? Yeah. Wendy Williams had that spot one time. The jokes are funny. The Quiet Storm. Oh my God. So a little bit more info here. It says that the network is moving Wolf Blitzer. Yeah, this is bad. Into his time slot. So he's being replaced by Wolf Blitzer, along with co-anchor Pamela Brown. Mr. Acosta's show is third place in his time slot for total viewers, behind both MSNBC and Fox News, though he has outperformed his MSNBC competitor in the key demographic for advertisers. Yeah, they don't care. They just want you. They's like, you got to go, Jim. What's that song? And is it Willie Nelson? You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to something. You never count your blessings. You're sitting at the table. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. He had to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? So he's out of there. It says they talk about his statement here, and they said they're very grateful for him. He had a long, distinguished, nearly 20-year career. Oh, it's Kenny Rogers. I'm sorry. I said Willie Nelson. I know somebody in the chat right now is going to say Sabs. Not every old white man in country music is Willie Nelson. Oh my God, I'm silly. Okay, moving on. Mr. Thompson, CNN chief executive, informed Mr. Acosta this month that the network wanted to move him to midnight as part of the reorganization of the network's lineup. The two people said Mr. Acosta was resistant to the idea, wary that he was being shuffled to the graveyard shift as part of a plan to sideline journalists who have been critical of President Trump. What did I tell you? So there you go. I love the reorganization, by the way. Jim, yeah, let's have a talk. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna be moving things around, Jim. Yeah, just moving things around. And this is not a demotion. We're just having a reorganization. We're just doing a reorg. He was getting demoted. Oh my God. So yeah, critical of President Trump. So they're trying to move him to a time where most people will not pay attention. Mr. Thompson told Mr. Acosta that it had nothing to do with Mr. Trump's inauguration, adding that Mr. Acosta's slot would be in prime time on the West Coast. Okay. I think we all know what that means though. But they were at an impasse. Status and email newsletter earlier reported on the tension between Mr. Acosta and CNN. So they were like, we got to get you out of here. And it says his exit is part of a broader remaking of CNN, which last week announced it was laying off roughly 200 people as part of a pivot to digital. CNN said last week it was working on a new streaming service and planned to hire roughly 100 people in new roles. Yeah, that's funny. You're going to lay off 200 and hire 100. I guess that should even it out. This is cracking me up. I'm sorry. President Trump responded to Mr. Acosta's departure in social media posts saying CNN tried to regulate him to the late night equivalent of Death Valley. Jesus Christ. So what happens to Jim next? Well, as you can imagine, he is joining the long line of other corporate media commentators that have decided to go independent. In fact, he made that announcement. You'll see it here. I mean, who could have predicted that? Hey guys, I've started something new.
Hey guys, it's Jim. And let me just say this, I've had quite the day. But as you could see earlier today, this was my last day at CNN. And I did want to jump on Substack Live here for a moment and say, welcome to my new venture. I'm going independent, at least for now. This is just the beginning, but I wanted to invite you to join me here on this platform as we talk about the day's news, talk about politics and so on. And I do want to, and just in case you missed my closing message earlier in the day, don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to fear. Hold on to the truth and hope. And we'll keep this conversation going. Great to see all of you here. We'll talk some more soon.
Hold on to the truth. Someday somebody's gonna make you want to turn around and say goodbye. Till then, baby, are you gonna let them hold you down and make you cry? Don't you know? Don't you know? Don't you change? Things will go your way if you hold on for one more day. Hold on. I'm sorry, my voice is bad tonight. Truth, you're so sweet. Sang away. I don't know why I'm in such a silly mood tonight, but it's anywho, a little bit of Wilson Phillips for you, bud. Anywho, the issue here is a trend that I've been noticing. A lot of these commentators from corporate media are moving on to Substack, right? So just be wary of this, because what I have noticed is that a lot of them that are doing this, while they have left corporate media and they're now independent on their own, from what I have seen in the past is that they still have the corporate media messaging. So it's like you can take the commentator from CNN, but you can't take the CNN out of the commentator. We've seen this happen with Don Lemon too. Like he went independent, but he'll still have some of those same type of talk. Like they're still going to have some of the State Department talking points because they've done this for so long. It's really hard, I think, when you've done it for like 20 years, like Jim Acosta has, you really have to deprogram your mind. You really have to tell yourself to look beyond the headlines and to see if there is different sides to these stories that is not being displayed in corporate media. That means you may have to be willing to look into other people who are investigative journalists, like a Glenn Greenwald, like the Gray Zone. Right? Like Sam Husseini. That means you may have to be willing to venture to that other side of the aisle. Problem is, you spent time during your career ignoring those people. You spent time during your career saying that these people are misinformation and all of that jazz. So I think that this pivot that I've seen from people going from corporate media to I'm creating the Substack and I'm now independent, I don't really hear them have an independent view. I hear some of the same corporate talking points. And I just think that you have to deprogram yourself. And I think that that's hard to do after that many years. And that's if you want to do it, because you're basically starting all over. You really are. Once you've been trained to sit there and, in front of a camera, I had to deprogram myself, right? So I studied broadcast journalism in undergrad. I had broadcast like internships, but I never had a broadcasting job, right? I wanted to have one, but I never was able to get a broadcasting job because we went into this thing called the housing crisis, right? Everybody remember that? And people weren't trying to hire no broadcast journalists. You know what I'm saying? So I went into education instead. But the reality is that when you're trained to do it that way and you do it like that for so long, it's hard to get out of the habit of getting away from the lies that you're fed constantly day after day. It's hard to push back on the fact that, the New York Times is just basically a publication of State Department talking points, that the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. So they're only going to talk about things that the Bezos would be okay with. They're going to have those types of talking points. You really have to start following the money so that you know why people have the narrative that they have. And that's something that you'll do if you really want to be truly independent. That may mean you may have to revisit some of your foreign policy positions that you talked about on corporate media for all these years. And from what I've seen, a lot of people that take this road are not willing to do that. I think Mark Lamont Hill has done that pretty well, though. But he was fired from CNN because he called out Israel. He told the truth, about Gaza. So he was already educated about that and was saying the right thing back then. So, but far and few, honey buns, far and few. So, good luck, Jim. And maybe he'll just write. I think he said he might do a podcast or something too. I don't know. I don't find Jim to be that interesting, but, peace, bro. It's like we were talking about this a couple nights ago. It's like that, you guys know that emoji? Oh no, what is it? What's the video, you guys? You guys know what I'm talking about? No, the GIF or the GIF where the dude's like, we were talking about this the other day, like, peace. Ghost. Oh my God. What is this? FM Mark Lamont Hill owes you a 5-stack Sabby. Oh my God. No, I mean, I think Mark's good on most issues. I disagree with him with the Kamala thing, but I think he's good on most issues. Jim, not so much, no. And I think Jim's just going to be boring. But I guess you guys will have to wait and see. Ashura said a Jim and Lemon podcast. Oh my God. Bye, Jim. Everybody say bye to Jim. Bye, bye, bye. Don't really want to make it down. I just want to tell you that I had enough. Hey. I'm out of here, guys. I got to go. I'm in such a silly mood. But yeah, Jim's out. He's done. It is what it is. And we're probably going to see more of this in the future just because they are reorganizing at CNN. All right. Okay, let's go to the comments. Gus says Glenn Greenwald's take on Jim Acosta is worth watching. I will check that out. Shirley Kirsten says good riddance to Acosta. Thank you, CM, for a vocal coach. Sometimes I'm okay. I appreciate your honesty, though. David said, this is why Acosta is not a real journalist like Blumenthal and Mate and Hirsch and so on. Yeah. And MBD, Sabby, have you been smoking? Me? No, not today. I'm sorry. My voice is a little scratchy, though. The air is really hot, like really dry. Like it's really cold and the air is really dry. I have like this little baby humidifier in here, so we'll see. Someday somebody gonna make you want to turn around and say goodbye. All right, I am out of here. Hope that song doesn't get stuck in your head. Join me Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.